So welcome students to the lecture number 2 of this subject .NET Technology MCA 504, and we are right now studying about unit number 1, that is Introduction to .NET Technology. And now today's topic is .NET Framework part number 2, because .NET Framework part 1 we have already studied, and now the continuation of that particular lecture is this, that is .NET Framework part number 2. So in this also we are going to see the remaining components of the .NET Framework architecture. Previously we just saw the main execution engine primarily in the previous lecture, that is Common Language Runtime. Apart from Common Language Runtime, some class libraries are also equally important. Languages which are actually we can say used in the .NET Framework are also equally important. So those aspects now we are going to study in this particular lecture. So let us begin. In this particular lecture we are going to see these particular topics, that is Introduction to the .NET Framework, in just a quicker way, as we have already studied it. We'll just recall .NET Framework architecture and .NET components in the topic number 1 and 2 quickly, as we have already done it in the previous lecture. But still the continuation needs a we can say the preview of the previous lecture, so that's why we'll just recall it in a faster way, and then we'll proceed towards the topic number 3, that is .NET Class Library and .NET Languages. Afterwards we will see the learning outcomes, research scope and references. Now already we have done with it, that is Introduction to .NET Framework. What is Microsoft .NET Framework? The .NET Framework, we know that it is a software development platform which was developed by Microsoft, and the framework was meant to create several applications which would run on the Windows platform. So basically the applications which were meant to be built on this particular .NET Framework was primarily to be we can say those applications which could only run on Windows platforms. So main focus of applications creation was that those applications should be executed on the Windows platform. So it was a software development platform which was developed by Microsoft, and this was the architecture which we saw in our previous lecture, and in it we saw these common language runtime part of this particular architecture. And now we are going to see this base class library, and that is the ADO.NET. What is ADO.NET? That also we will see in this particular lecture, and then we will also see the yes, of course, the class libraries, which are equally important, means it's an integral part of this particular architecture. So all these components we will study one by one. In the previous lecture we saw that .NET components are the most important ones, means the major .NET components which we know are the two mainly, that is CLR, it's the execution engine of the .NET Framework. Just like similarly to the Java virtual machine, exactly the like the JVM, CLR is also there. It acts as an execution engine for the .NET Framework architecture, and it is we can say the last layer of the .NET Framework architecture. And also there is a class library or the .NET Framework class library. This diagram actually depicts the three areas in a category wise, three areas of the .NET Framework architecture. This is CLR, that is Common Language Runtime. Library means the framework, whole framework's class library it is, because here several different languages are used: C#, J#, VB.NET, etc. So to provide an interoperability between these we can say libraries, or since they are running on a certain common platform or framework, so we cannot say that this library is intended for C#.NET only, or this library is intended for VB.NET only. No, it's not that. That is actually this is a whole framework class library. That's why it's called as framework class library. Now languages are several languages which can be used in the .NET architecture. In fact, I have already mentioned that there are 70 plus languages which the .NET Framework supports, but the language as application means what kind of we can say the applications which are being carried on using those languages, like creation of the Windows forms, creation of the web forms using the ASP.NET, providing the database connectivity, etc. using the ADO.NET. So these all come under the language category of the .NET framework architecture. That is creation of the Windows forms, creation of the web application forms using the ASP.NET, and providing the database connectivity using the ADO.NET. So all these means the SQL query language, etc. Also we call it to be a language because it is basically meant for querying the particular database. But ActiveX data objects here, which is mentioned, ADO.NET, we'll consider it we can say a sort of language which is actually responsible for providing database connectivity. ASP.NET is a we can say it's used for creation of the web forms or web pages, and Windows forms, for the Windows forms we can use C#.NET, VB.NET, etc. So n numbers of different languages can be formulated or can be used on the .NET framework architecture. Now basically there are four main components of the .NET framework. We know that it's CLR, CTS, BCL, that is base class library, and CLS, common language specification. So already we have studied about it. CLR, we'll just quickly review it. It's a virtual machine component of the Microsoft .NET framework. It manages execution of .NET programs. It's an execution engine for execution of the .NET programs. CTS, it's a standard, it's a specification which defines that how the type definitions will be represented in the computer memory, or how the different data types of different languages, how they will be represented in a computer memory. That is defined in this particular standard, that is CTS, common type system. Then we will come upon to the base class library, which we are going to study in detail in this lecture. Base class library is what? It's a collection of various classes from the .NET framework, from which all the base classes like system.object, system.collection, etc. are built. So in the previous lecture we just saw this particular single definition about base class library. Now we will see it in detail after this CLS. Now common language specification, what we studied about common language specification, it's a part of the standard specification given in the .NET framework. Basically it defines a subset of the CTS only, common type system, and it ensures actually the language interoperability. That is it ensures that there will no conflict arising amongst the different languages which are used using this particular .NET platform. So it's a standard specification already specified when this framework was formulated. So during that time only this specification was given, that there must be language interoperability, whether it is the C#.NET being used on the platform, whether it is VB.NET being used on the platform. There should not arise any conflict regarding the types of the data types, or means that the number of bytes each data type takes in this particular, means every language has different data types, but this data type variation should not become a reason for the conflict. So that's why there is a specification already given which ensures language interoperability. Now we will discuss about the class library, or the base class library, or the framework class library. Anything we can call it. Commonly we will call it a class library. What is a class library? Actually the .NET framework includes a set of standard class libraries, right? There are standard class libraries which are actually being included in the .NET framework. What is a class library? A class library is we can say a collection or a group of methods and functions that can be used for the core purpose. Generally class library is meant for overall common purpose, and it is basically, we can say that it is a collection of different methods and functions. For example, there is a class library with methods to handle all file level operations. So there is a method which can be used to read the text from a file. Similarly, there is a method to write text to a file. So generally class library has a certain specific function defined for it already, and for example if we consider a certain class library which is having methods or functions to handle all the file level operations like reading and writing any particular means reading a particular text from a file or writing a particular text to a file. So since there is a method already mentioned in the class library, so we can easily use it in our program. So just like header files are there in the when we use the C++ language, similarly when the packages are imported in the Java language, similar functionality is performed here by the framework class libraries, which actually include different methods and functions to handle various operations, mathematical operations, or we can say the standard input output operations, file level operations. For every other operation there is a we can say class library already present in this particular framework. So we can say that the .NET framework actually includes a set of standard class libraries, and these class libraries are we can say group or collection of methods and functions that can be used for a core purpose. Most of the methods are split into either the system.asterisk or Microsoft.asterisk namespaces. Generally, whenever we try to import some class library into our program, so the general syntax which we follow in the .NET programs is system.asterisk. System.asterisk basically is written to include, means we also can include some other files also, but system is the mandatory one. System is the namespace basically, and system.io etc. for the standard input output functioning. If you have to include in our program, then system.io has to be used. So we can say that system.out.println etc. is used for that is displaying etc. the whatever may be the we can say the comment which is written inside the program. So system is a namespace, it's a common one, but system.out.println is used afterwards in the program. But what kind of class library which will be imported, like system.io. System.io can be called as a class library, which will actually help us to get the standard input output means of the program. So system.asterisk is just a common general syntax, and after the dot we can use any particular functionality or method, whatever we want to import in our program or use in our program. So most of the methods are split into either the system.asterisk or Microsoft.asterisk namespaces. Here the asterisk just means a reference to all of the methods that fall under the system or Microsoft namespace. So whatever may be the, like suppose I just told you the example of system.io, input output, standard input output. So simply like we use in C++ we use stdio.h etc. So for standard input output generally we use some header files. Similar header files we use here also, that is class library. So system.io can be one of the example of this, and asterisk means it's a reference, to all of the methods. .io method, .io is a method which is actually included in this particular system namespace. So here the asterisk will mean what? It will mean a reference to all the input output methods. So we can say that a namespace is a logical separation of methods. What is a namespace? A namespace is a logical separation of methods. System is a namespace over here, and it is basically specifies the logical separation of methods. Different methods can be used in using this namespace, and simply we can mention it at the starting of the program, right? So system is a namespace which is generally used. Similarly, inside the program, whenever we want to display our certain particular program's comment, then we simply write system.out.println etc. So it's basically used for including the methods or functions. Similarly, there is one more namespace, like we can say that there may be for example there may be system like similarly from system.io, similarly there can be console.readline, console.writeline etc. we use, right? So console is what? Console is also a namespace, right? And readline, writeline are the methods of those namespace. So namespace comes first and methods come afterwards. So this we can from this we can infer that namespace are actually the we can say bigger concept, and under these namespaces several different methods and functions are included. So first we have to mention the name of the namespace, and then we will include the method or the functionality which we want to add in our program. So we can say that a namespace is a logical separation of methods. Now we'll just come upon to the languages. Actually, .NET Framework supports more than 60 or to 70 programming languages, in which 11 programming languages are designed and developed by Microsoft. So the Microsoft actually has designed 11 programming languages. .NET Framework actually supports more than 60 programming languages. The remaining non-Microsoft languages which are supported by .NET Framework but not designed and developed by Microsoft are also some. But still, here we will discuss the .NET languages which are developed and designed by Microsoft. Means we can say that some 11 means out of the 60, 11 programming languages are designed and developed by Microsoft, and the remaining are the non-Microsoft languages. They are not developed by Microsoft. These are the languages which are developed by Microsoft company: C#, .NET, VB.NET, C++.NET, J#, .NET, F#, .NET, JScript.NET, Windows PowerShell. Yes, of course, Windows PowerShell is it's just like it's a command prompt, we all know. So this is one of we can say it's a programming language developed by Microsoft. Then is Iron Ruby, Iron Python, C Omega, and Abstract State Machine Language, ASML. These are the, we can say, the .NET specific languages which are designed and developed by Microsoft. So C#, .NET, we already know that several object oriented concepts which are followed in C++, similar concepts are followed in C# also. And also VB.NET is there, Visual Basic.NET, for we can say learning this VB.NET. Basic prerequisite for this VB.NET is simply we know that we should know the Visual Basic basic operation, Visual Basic operation. In C++.NET is very simple. J#, F#, .NET also, they have certain different syntax. JScript.NET is there. So n numbers of different languages. 11 languages were developed by the Microsoft. Remaining are the non-Microsoft languages, but still they can be made to be run on the .NET framework or the .NET platform. Means they are capable to run on the .NET framework or .NET platform. Next we'll come upon to the XML. What is XML? Since we in this particular architecture, I'll just come upon to the architecture first. Here at the very starting I mentioned here ADO.NET Data and XML, and ASP.NET Web Services, Web Forms, Window Forms. So generally these two components, after the base class library, after the framework class library, these two components come, that is ADO.NET Data and XML, and this particular ASP.NET Web Services, Web Forms, which are created using the ASP.NET technology, and Windows Forms generally created using these languages. So now we will see it one by one, that what is actually XML is. What is XML? Extensible Markup Language. XML is a markup language that defines a set of rules for encoding the documents in a format that is both human readable and machine readable. XML is a software and hardware independent tool for storing and transporting the data. So generally we always come across this terminology XML. But what is XML is? What is the purpose of this XML is in our .NET framework? Actually, Extensible Markup Language, or XML, is actually we can say a set of rules used for encoding the documents in a format which is both human readable as well as machine readable. Means certain documents are to be encoded, right? So those documents which are to be encoded, those should be encoded in such a format that that format should be readable by the human beings also and by the machine also. So that is why there must be some standard language which basically should define a certain rule for encoding the documents in a this particular compatible format. That means human readable as well as machine readable. So, and also it is basically a software and hardware independent tool for storing and transporting the data. So XML is it does not depend on software or hardware. It's simply a software hardware independent tool, we can say, and it's basically responsible for storing and transporting the data. So this is just a general we can say example we can call that this kind of format is generally followed in while writing the XML programs. So this is similarly means this kind of the tags which we used in HTML CSS. So similarly we here also root, product, code, stock, quantity, barcode, product, etc. These kind of tags we use here. And here basically this it's just a sample code, and in this format generally the XML means extensible markup language code is written. So it's a software and a hardware independent tool, and basically responsible for storing the data and transporting the data. Now we will come upon to the ADO.NET. What is ADO.NET? ActiveX data objects. The full form is ActiveX data objects. Basically ADO.NET is responsible for providing a bridge between the front-end controls and the back-end database. So the ADO.NET objects encapsulate all the data access operations, and the controls interact with these objects to display the data, thus hiding the details of the movement of data. So basically ADO.NET is we can say a database connectivity provision which is being provided in this particular .NET framework architecture. ADO.NET is basically responsible for providing the database connectivity with the front end and the back end database. So for example, if we have created certain particular registration form for any particular exam, and now we are inserting the details into it, but now those details must be connected to some particular database. Means there must be some database which should be built in the background for that particular entry details which are being entered. So we can say that there must be some technology that should basically we can say provide a connectivity between this particular registration form entering, that is the front end, and the details, means whatever may be the user that he is filling the details into the exam registration form. Those details must be stored somewhere in the particular database. So the connectivity of this particular user interface may be anything like if this user is using some VB.NET application or C#.NET application, anything, but this particular means the database connectivity is basically we can say that provided by this ADO.NET. Means the user fills certain entries in the forms, those entries are stored back into the database, and this form the user interface should remain connected with that particular database. This data should be stored somewhere in the database. So for how it is done using a technology called as the ADO.NET. So ActiveX data object provides a bridge between the front end controls and the back end database, and it also means there are certain objects of the ADO.NET which actually are responsible for encapsulating all the data access operations, whatever may be the data which are being accessed, whatever the data access operations are being done, it encapsulates all those data access operations, and also it also encapsulates those controls which controls interact with these objects to display the data. So it also basically encapsulates those controls which basically interact with the objects, ADO.NET objects, to display the data, thus hiding the details of movement of data. So generally what is encapsulation property in the object oriented concept? That is the we can say encapsulation means hiding the we can say the details without displaying the details, generally hiding the details of the movement of the data. So encapsulation means we can call it as all those operations which are actually we can say data access operations are there, or the control interaction with these objects is there to display the data. All those operations are encapsulated, and thus hiding the details of the movement of the data. So how the data is moving, that is not we can say, means user is not bothered with the movement of the data, right? Means the details of the this movement of the data is hidden, and simply the encapsulation of these operations is done, that is all the data access operations and the controls which interact with these objects to display the data. This is actually about the ADO.NET, and it provides a bridge between the front end controls and the we can say the back end database. These are the student effective learning outcomes. I I hope students must have gained a certain ability to observe and develop sense making, logical skills for abstract concepts. Students must have developed critical and innovative thinking skills. Some adaptive thinking skills must have been developed after studying these two parts of the lectures, that is part 1 and part 2 .NET framework. Of course, research scope, .NET actually it's more comprehensive in manufacturing native, or we can say the cross-platform web applications using HTML5 or JavaScript or CSS. So generally there is a need that website developers can create more responsive Azure microservices and Azure enabled applications. So there is a need that website developers should do more research in this area to develop more responsive Azure microservices and Azure enabled applications. Moreover, SharePoint, SQL Server, cloud-based applications with faster performance. Also, there is a need in the future where actually this .NET platform should be more improved. This article incorporates text and diagrams included from the references which are given below. Thank you.